This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon, and we're going to continue on today with the Enneagram bandwagon. Yesterday we went through Type 1, the Reformer, or the Perfectionist. It's interesting talking through all these types, and especially when I was first learning them, and I was learning about a mixture of the 9 different types and which ones I relate with and which ones I don't relate with. And when first sort of really learning about Type 1s and meeting a lot of people that sort of did Type 1s, especially through any sort of training or courses, I could really see the difference in between the ways that we thought, which was interesting. And then also the differences in how they could see the way that we thought and whether they were okay with it or whether they had took issue with it or anything along those lines. It was very, very quite fascinating. But the interesting thing that the 3 types that I lean into the most would be a 7, 8, and a 2. So the enthusiast, the challenger, and the helper. And we're going to go through the helper today, the Type 2. And it's interesting that, so the helper was when I did the test initially, October a few years ago, it was my third highest rating, third highest score. And what was interesting about it is that I really recognized at certain stages in my life where I really connected to a lot of the Type 2 patterns. Now, at my stage, I don't probably connect to a lot of the average stuff, so to speak. It's really quite interesting because there is a 3 levels that I've mentioned before. There's a top 3 out of 9, so there's 9, but the top 3 is the healthy levels, 1, 2, and 3. 4, 5, and 6 is the average levels, and this is where most people that we meet will be. We have a bandwidth. We might have a state peak into like a level 3 of healthiness, and right back down to like we might have an anchor in 5 or 6 or something, and we have a bandwidth that we can go between that in every single day. But most people that we see each day will be in the average range, really. And then there's the unhealthy. So 7, 8, and 9, that's the unhealthy range. Now 1, 2, and 3 is often when then people start to integrate and start to take on different types. 7, 8, and 9 is when people often disintegrate and take on traits of different types as well. So each type has a path of integration and the path of disintegration. So let's look at the 2. Let's look at the helper. And an average helper is somebody who really values being there and being able to be, well, as the name suggests, helpful. So they will do what they can to make sure that they're able to put their hand up and offer help where possible. They're the person that's going to come and with their ute, or they're going to be putting their hand up to help at community things. They're going to be offering their help at the dinner table at Christmas time. The average helper will be that person who's always there ready to help. And we may see this, right, in today's society. There's this really nice thing and really encourage it that we should always be really helpful. One of the challenges that Type 2s can often have is that they're not actually just guessing that other people need help, or they're guessing what they should do for the other person, and they call it helping, when a lot of the time they're not actually helping. And so this is the interesting thing, is that being helpful is often not helpful. And it's because the average 2 may have got a lot of feedback as a child to that their worth was really heavily based upon, like them being a good boy or a good girl was heavily based upon how helpful they were. It's like, oh my God, what would I do without you? That kind of terminology. It's funny, I actually remember my nan saying that to me, which is really quite fascinating. But it's that type of terminology that allows that person to go, wow, so if I'm really helpful, I'm really valuable. And so what do they end up doing is starting to seek out areas in their life where they can be helpful because it makes them feel good. And so later on in life, they're not aware of this, and the average 2 will just continually keep doing that, thinking it's a nice thing to do, it's the right thing to do. But what they're actually really doing, unconsciously, is seeking to feel good for themselves. And if they can't help, they haven't given themselves permission to feel good. They actually have to help in order to feel good. And because of that, when they ask someone if they can help, what happens, and the person's like, no, I don't need it. They're like, oh, well, I could do this or that. They're like, I just said I don't need it. They're like, well, I could do something. Surely I could do it. And they end up being annoying, not because they're trying to be helpful, but because they want to feel good, right? And this is really quite fascinating. So the helper can get stuck in that space, and that's probably the average to lower average levels. As the helper goes to a healthy level, they really start to take on this quality of looking after themselves. So the helper almost starts helping themselves first. They start to recognize, and they take on some of the traits of the 4, and the 4 has this, the individuals that is, has this ability to go in and be in touch with their needs and what they want and their desires. And the type 2 moves from this externally referent position to starts to shift into this internally referent position. It's like, well, this is the idea of that if I can't make sure my cup is full, how can I help fill up everyone else's? And if we can't take care of ourselves, how are we meant to take care of other people? It's this type of idea. So when you see people share stuff on social media, that might be like, I care so much about people, but I'm always the last person that people think of, or something along those lines. It's a really broad comment, but there's different variations of it. That would be a sign of potentially an average helper, right? They're in a transaction ship where they're helping. They're not actually helping. So helping with an expectation of return is not helping, right? Whereas an integrated helper is a person they help a lot of people by giving them space to help themselves, because that's how they got to a healthy integrated position. And so that's it. What's really interesting as well in relation to this integrated type 2 is that often 4s, the individualists, can be quite really withdrawn, and people don't understand me, and they really want to be found. And an average 2 wants to find them, right? They want to find them. They want to go and help that person that's withdrawn and a little bit different and not really gelling with everything else. The type 2 wants to be able to help that person, and they will find out different ways to show signs of care and love, hoping that they're going to get something in return. But what's so interesting is that a healthy 2 takes on the traits of a healthy 4, right? Or above average 4. Which is interesting because that 2 now starts to take care of themselves and be in touch with themselves. They move from this externally referent world of making sure everyone else is okay, that they realize that in doing so, they sacrifice their own health. They're like, I can't fucking keep doing that. And so often they snap, because when they continue to look after everyone else and no one's looking after them, they then go to an unhealthy space. They disintegrate and they go to an 8, which is the challenger. And that's when they often lash out. They become angry. The interesting thing around an unhealthy 2 as well is that they can have stalkerish tendencies. Now, in today's world, that's pretty easy with all our social media. We can simply just basically go on someone's profile and stalk them, so to speak. But it's not really stalking. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. But in the back, the intent, and one of the key things, and I'll mention it probably in every single podcast, the key things for all of the traits of all of these types is that each person has the ability to do the same behavior. What we're looking at here is the intent. We're looking at the intent of the behavior, not the actual behavior, right? And so the key thing there is like each type might look at somebody's profile, but the intent behind that. And for a 2, they're potentially, especially in an unhealthy 2, they're really probably coming from this space of already not feeling good enough, already feeling rejected, and they may come with this idea that this person may have already moved on, or this person is posting, but they haven't written back to my message, and they've already got this anxiousness there, or something along those lines. And that's often the intent of the 2, even though it's a behavior. It's a pretty distinct behavior, but it's a behavior that can be like, I was just looking at the person's profile, so what, right? So it's really interesting. So whereas a 3 maybe they're looking at someone's profile to compare because they're in a competition, right? I'm not just in a competition with myself. No, you're not, mate. That's why you're fucking comparing to everyone else. Whereas the type 4 is comparing their life. They're comparing not a competition, but why they're not good enough. Your type 5, they're figuring out how to make the app, and then the social media app, rather than stalking. But then again, a healthy 5 does go to 8, which is the very assertive challenger as well. But either way, so you start to see that each type has its own variation of this deeper intent behind the behavior. And so this is why it's so crucial for us to understand intent and not just get stuck on the objective behavior, but also the subjective intent behind the objective behavior. And the 2s, an average 2, go back to that, is going to assume, they're going to mind read what the subjective intent is in someone else, rather than being a healthy 2 and really inquiring and calibrating off the other person. So there's your 2, the helper. The helpers are most helpful when they help themselves is the easiest way to think about it. When they can actually really take a moment to take care of themselves, rather than be in this space of, if I take care of you, will you take care of me? That's a codependency, and that leads to some pretty dangerous places. So even though it might look nice, it's like, you complete me. A healthy two is, I'm complete and I choose you. It's a real big fucking difference. Whereas an unhealthy two will they'll actually keep people around them that need help, so that they continually feel good about themselves. Pretty interesting. But Tim, on that note, thank you very much for tuning in. If you found this podcast beneficial, maybe if you know a type 2 or someone that does type 2, it'd mean the world to me if you would share it with them. If you end up sharing it on social media, on Instagram, then make sure you tag me at DDNix. Otherwise, team, join the conversation, jump on Facebook. I put the Enneagram test in there as well. Search Mood Prep online. I'd love to see you in there. Otherwise, team, that's it. That's me. I'm done. Until tomorrow, peace and pizza. Kick today in the dick. Slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.
to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.